This moment's been a long time coming, JoJo.
Dio, you villain! What sort of monster have you become? JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is notorious for its cultural references embedded in the series, with most of its characters and stands having namesakes from Western music, ranging from the King of Metal himself, Ronnie James Dio, all the way to the 1990s dance pop sensation, Spice Girls. But along with Araki's love for Western music making an impact on JoJo, so does Araki's love for horror. For the people up to date with the series, probably wouldn't use the term horror when describing it. Well, because really, how could anyone describe a series about invisible fighting spirits, high school students chasing down a serial killer, gang violence, prison life, and horseback riding in any other way than just being a bizarre adventure? But if we look back to the beginning of JoJo, specifically the first part, Phantom Blood, it's quite simply horror. There isn't many other ways to describe it. We have our main protagonist, Jonathan Joestar, an honest, good-natured, and very brave teenager who eventually throughout his story arc, we see him grow into a man. And in just the first 3 episodes of the anime, we see Jonathan's childhood dog burned alive, as well as his last remaining parent die in his arms, and also his childhood home burned to the ground. All of this being done by one sociopath who wants nothing more than to gain power, immortality, and ruin Jonathan's life. Phantom Blood then continues with Jonathan fighting an army of the undead, including vampires and zombies, to eventually reach the person who threw his life into turmoil, Dio Brando. So you can see that JoJo has come a very long way from where it started, but throughout the series it's always kept hints of its eerie horror origins throughout every part. So today we will go through each part of the series, looking at the different elements of horror embedded in each one. Hello everyone, xForts here, and welcome to a Halloween special, The Horror Within JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. So to finish up Phantom Blood, pretty much everything about this part screams horror. The 1800s Victorian setting, vampires, zombies, and even just the name Phantom Blood. And also gore. Lots and lots of gore. The second part of JoJo, Battle Tendency, has some horror elements carried over from Phantom Blood, with the continuation of zombies and vampires returning to the series, but with also a new threat known as the Pillarmen. The Pillarmen presented a new type of horror to the series with their unique characteristics. Unlike zombies and vampires, who were just most of the time mindless killing machines, the Pillarmen were prestigious, intelligent, and most importantly, fashionable. Just something about their presence was unsettling. I'm not sure if it was their I don't give a shit about anything attitude, or the massive power gap between them and everyone else in the series, and knowing that if they wanted to, together they could have just slaughtered everyone, including our main protagonist, super easily. So although Battle Tendency had its fair amount of horror, it was always lightened up by its overzealous main character, Joseph Joestar. But just the bizarre way that the Pillarmen would kill with their unique powers, and the lore behind them being the apex predators of the earth who have been awakened to reclaim it, was truly something of horror. In the third part of JoJo, Stardust Crusaders, we ditch fighting zombies, Pillarmen, and vampires altogether, except for of course our main villain. And the majority of the part is spent fighting stand users, which depending on the stand, they can be way more terrifying than any zombie or vampire. Part 3 has some of the most horror-inspired stands from the whole series, drawing inspiration from Western films such as Nightmare on Elm Street and Chucky Child's Play. The stand Ebony Devil is a stand that can possess inanimate objects, and paired with its user Devo the Cursed, make for a truly terrifying stand. Hey!
The
Freddy Krueger of stands, Death 13, a stand that can attack you in your dreams. The design of this stand alone is enough to give you nightmares, but along with its ability, makes for one of the most horrific stands in the whole series. And the last stand I'll mention for part 3 is just cream. I mean, look at it. It's terrifying. Moving on to the more lighthearted part of JoJo, the fourth part, Diamond is Unbreakable. Set in a colorful and full of life town Morio where there sleeps a serial killer ever waiting for his next victim, leaving a scar on what was once a peaceful town for all. Although it might seem like part 4 is a calm, happy, and peaceful part, it actually has elements of horror hiding in plain sight all over it, giving the impression that this town has something dark inside it and will never be safe as long as the serial killer resides within it. The mindset of our main villain is everything we love in a natural evil serial killer. The way he can't control his urge to kill, how methodical he is, and also the way that he'll fix your socks after he's killed you because of his just extreme mental damage. Yoshikage Kira and Diamond is Unbreakable is horror done right.
ちゃんと吐き直せ
The fifth part of JoJo, Vento Areo, has its horror elements not in its overarching story, but in some of its creepy and downright fucked up characters and stand abilities. Some of the most horrifically good stand designs come from part 5, including Purple Haze, Black Sabbath, The Grateful Dead, and King Crimson. But one fucked up stand in particular is Babyface, a stand that impregnates a female in order to create a secondary stand that the host will eventually give birth to, and a homunculus stand that can grow and become a full adult. Part 5 also has some of the most horrific panels in the series, and characters such as Chocolata, who was a former doctor and would operate on healthy patients, tearing them apart until they died, and he also had an obsession with filming it so he could rewatch their deaths. That is a fucked up character. Stone Ocean, the sixth part of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, which takes place in a prison, and ironically enough, I feel like it has the least amount of horror elements in the series so far, but still has a fair share amount of unsettling stands. Such as Limp Bizkit, a stand that creates invisible zombies, also Highway to Hell, a stand that links you to another person that just happens to be suicidal, and also Underworld, a stand that puts you in literal disasters that are underground. Yeah, it's pretty bizarre. But one stand that would be the most horrific of all would be Bohemian Rhapsody, a stand that could bring all of your worst nightmares to life. Just imagine Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, and every other horror character brought to life. Yeah, that's a pretty terrifying stand. The seventh part of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is Steel Ball Run, and I feel like this series is slowly moving further and further away from its horror origins with each part, which is sad because I do enjoy the creepy and disturbing elements from the earlier parts such as Phantom Blood, but Steel Ball Run takes place in the late 1800s in an alternate universe with stands being less common but more of a mystery when compared to the original universe. Some of the spooky stands in part 7 include Civil War, being able to manifest anything that a target feels regret towards or guilt. Tattoo You, because it's just a really bizarre way in the way that it functions and it requires 11 people. Hot Pants is Cream Starter, Spray, because you know it does the flesh thing and sprays flesh at people. And of course, Scary Monsters, being able to turn yourself into Papa Dinosaur and turning everyone else into little dinosaurs that you can control. So the overarching story of Steel Ball Run, racing for personal goals and also to collect the corpse part of Jesus, isn't really horror itself, but is still a unique and bizarre concept that will keep you thinking. And finally, to the most current part of JoJo, Part 8, JoJoLands. What we've seen from JoJoLands so far isn't really anything that screams horror, but there is something that is very reminiscent of its counterpart, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 4, Diamond is Unbreakable, because they are both set in Morio, and I feel like Part 8 has that same sort of subtle undertone, but instead of lingering on horror, it's more of the mystery, because of all the interesting things happening around Morio, such as the walleyes, and just how Josuke came to be. But I would definitely like to see JoJoLands dive deeper down into the horror elements that we've seen in JoJo. And for the stands, there really hasn't been any stands in Part 8 that are really shocking or creepy looking that have just screamed horror. But just the mystery of Part 8 and all the unsolved questions that we have is definitely leaving something unsettling and just a certain feel to this part. So that was just a brief overview of some of the horror elements and just some of the scariest and creepiest stands throughout JoJo, and I really hope you guys enjoyed this Halloween special video. If you guys are in the Halloween spirit this year, I definitely recommend you guys either reread or rewatch JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 1, Phantom Blood. You can finish it in just about a day, and I promise you won't regret it. So thank you guys for watching this video. Drop a like on it if you enjoyed or if I occupied your boredom for a little bit, and also subscribe for more JoJo videos. I hope you guys enjoyed the